Welcome, mate. It's your boy, I Read Reddit, back at it again with more entitled parent stories. So, if you've ever wanted to tase an entitled parent in the face, this is going to be the episode for you. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, guys. I hope you love it. Okay, so all of our stories were posted by number 31 type O. First story is titled, Entitled Parent Thinks That I Was Bullying Her Kid in a Video Game. This happened to me last week, and I figured I should share it here. But, like every post, I have to share a bit of background. So I play a game called Ingress, which is basically capture the flag, but on a global scale, but played on your phone. It's important to note that the game is real-time, and the difference between player levels is massive. For reference, a player has to wait until they hit level 6 in order to actually attack enemy player captures without the assistance of another player. Also, I am mute, so this encounter was almost exclusively between my sister and the entitled parent. I'd also like to point out that the police were not called, and there were not any shouting matches like some of the stories on here. Sorry in advance for any spelling errors. Our cast are me, the majestic gummy bear, S, my twin Sarah, entitled parent, and nice kid. Given that it was a Saturday, Sarah and I decided to go to a quiet little coffee shop. We chose our table, and Sarah went up to order our coffee, while I pulled out my phone and booted up Ingress. The coffee shop is a known capture point, so I figured I would farm up some gear while I waited for Sarah to return. This is when the entitled parent and nice kid make an entrance. When they entered, I noticed that the capture point for the coffee shop was now owned by a new player that I hadn't seen before. Since this player was a low level, I think they were level 3, and I'm a significantly higher player, level 12, I decided to destroy their capture and claim it as my own. Purely as an informative lesson that there are other players and that they should be wary about. I'm not going to go into great detail about what happened next, but suffice to say, I destroyed the player's capture point. They started sending me messages in-game, but I ignored them because Sarah returned after having placed our order. Sarah and I spoke, in sign, about our plans for the day while we waited. When they called our order, I noticed that the entitled parent was walking around the dining area and was talking with other customers. I didn't think much of it until I get another alert on my phone regarding the game. It plays a distinct chime, which I'm guessing the entitled parent heard because she started walking towards our table. She goes to me, "Excuse me, but are you," insert my in-game username, "and did you just take my son's capture?" I just stared at her because I was kind of surprised, both by the fact that it turned out that she was actually going to each person asking if they were the one who took the capture, and she gave my username. Yeah, I've been playing for a year or two, and there are groups of players who work together, and I have received messages from a few groups in-game asking me to join, but that's not my style. I'm a solo player, because I just mainly play while I'm going to and from class. So to be confronted so directly was a bit of a shock. Well? The entitled parent looked down at my phone and naturally saw that the game was open. She became visibly agitated. Not extreme beet red or face twisted in fury as some people portray in their posts, but just annoyed. After having read more than enough stories on Reddit and dealing with just as many entitled parents while working at my uncle's skate rink, I started to get worried, and started glancing back to Sarah to see if she was on her way back. Confrontation is something I tend to try and avoid. Nice kid says, "Wow, you play the game too? That's so cool! Mommy, she's the person who took my capture. She's another player, isn't that cool?" Sarah returns and says, "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" Sarah had returned with our coffee, which I was thankful for. The entitled parent looked at Sarah and began saying, "Yes, there is. Your friend here is bullying my baby. She took his capture and won't give it back to him." Sarah looked at me with an eyebrow raised, so I tell her what's going on. Fortunately, Sarah knows about the game and has often watched me play. She explained to the entitled parent what I told her, and to my surprise, the entitled parent actually didn't try to argue about it. They explained that she saw my level and thought I was bullying her son because I wasn't answering the messages she'd sent via in-game. She took her kid's phone and started messaging me. I told her, Sarah translated, that I tend to play by myself and don't answer messages in-game because I am a busy person and a solo player. To wrap this all up, the entitled parent apologized, and I gave the nice kid some in-game gear to help him along. The parent tried to get our contact information so that I could meet up to play the game with her son, to which I declined. She seemed a little upset, but said that she understood. Edit: a few people have commented claiming that this is more of a concerned parent rather than entitled. While yes, I respect their opinions, I'm afraid that I don't see it that way. She confronted me in what I viewed as a confrontational manner, which I later came to interpret as entitled when she accused me of bullying her child in the game without bothering to consider that the game, a multiplayer one at that, is capture the flag, and her son's things being destroyed in game was bound to happen. Viewing situations how others would is something that I heavily struggle with due to personal circumstances. If others view it as a concerned parent, then okay, but please understand that I have trouble seeing it that way. And I'm glad that she didn't bully her for being mute. Our next story is titled, Apparently, sometimes the best course of action in dealing with an entitled teen is just to present the threat of a taser. So, some people have commented and asked if I've been bullied for being mute. Nice segue, and the answer to that is yes, I have. It's not very common, but it has happened. Luckily, it doesn't last long since it typically happens while I'm working. Unfortunately, there isn't much that can be done about it. Namely, due in large part to living near a rich neighborhood. This story isn't so much about me being bullied, however. It's about an entitled teenager who began harassing me after both me and my twin turned him down. His blatant and unwarranted antics ranged from trying to sit next to me or Sarah while on lunch break. He at one point tried to put his arm around me while he sat down, or accidentally putting his hands where they should never be. Sarah, or another co-worker, thankfully came to the rescue when he did. You're probably wondering if we called the police, and we did, but nothing came of it because his dad had friends in the police force, which the entitled teenager wasted no time in explaining to us after they were called the first time. True to his word, they never did anything. Our uncle did ban him, but was later forced to rescind the ban when his parents showed up with a lawyer threatening to sue us for a myriad of false claims. To those of you who are wondering, our uncle could barely afford a lawyer of his own, and it was by sheer luck that he was granted custody of Sarah and I. After the lawyer and parents left, Sarah decided that she would teach the entitled teenager a lesson that he would never forget. Sarah bought a taser and quickly became familiar with it, safety and all. So the cast of this story are me, the majestic gummy bear, Sarah, my twin, and the entitled teenager. Sorry for any spelling errors. The story. I had just gotten a new pair of custom skates. They were designed for racing, and I had someone make them for me. And I really wanted to try them out. So Sarah and I had our uncle allow us to clock out early and do some skating since it was a really slow day with no customers. So then I decided to try them out. The entitled teenager entered while I was doing laps one day. I remember that he was obviously trying to make it look like he had been skating for some time, but he was clearly inexperienced. He requested quad skates. Given his history, I ignored him and sped up. He then tried to catch up with me, and he goes, "Those are really nice skates, can I try them?" He yelled as I passed by him. For obvious reasons, I glared and shook my head. I recalled that he continued to ask after that, but I just ignored him. I'm guessing he had had enough because sometimes later, he stopped asking and got a brilliant idea. What was that idea, you might ask? Hold his arm out and try to get me to stop at the last second. I really don't do well when people I don't know try to get into my personal space. At all. So you can imagine that when he did that, I got scared. So much so that I lost my balance and fell. Unfortunately, I was going really fast, so I pretty much started rolling and sliding halfway across the skating floor. While I was getting to my feet, I heard him come up behind me and go, "Oh my god, are you alright? Here, let me help you." I really don't like being near people I don't know, or conversely hate. But I hate when people I don't know, or hate, touch me even more. The entitled teen wasted no time in grabbing my arms and lifting me to my feet. I already know what his intentions were. You see, the entitled teenager knows I'm mute, and he knows that I start to freeze up when people get near or touch me. You already know where this is going. He then started to hug me and just act like we were close friends, saying stuff like, "It's okay," or "I'm here," as if nothing was wrong. For some reason, back then, the teenager could never understand the concept of no, and always acted like we were just playing around when I ignored him or Sarah told him off. Naturally, I was terrified and wondering where my sister was because I didn't hear her call out when I fell. That question was answered very quickly. Remember when I mentioned that taser Sarah owned? "Get your fudging hands off my sister!" The teen quickly released me after she yelled that, and I scrambled to Sarah as best I could without falling. She had pulled out her taser and aimed at him. Come on now, I was just trying to be... Bullcrap! Don't you ever lay your hands on me or my sister, especially my sister, again, because I promise you, you will regret it. He didn't say anything, just scoffed and shoved by Sarah to get his shoes exchanged. The entitled teen must have learned his lesson because he stopped coming over and we never got any phone calls from his parents, nor their lawyer. But, in my opinion, I really don't care either. So, our next story is a continuation from one I covered previously. This one is titled, Entitled Parent Tries to Get Me Fired Over Not Giving Her Son New Skates. Update. For those who haven't read the other post, know that she is mute and uses pen and paper to communicate, since only Sarah and the uncle know sign language. Cast so far: me, the majestic gummy bear; Kevin, my service dog; husband of the entitled parent; and coworker 1. Today, class ended early, so I decided that since no one was home, I would go into the skate rink and wait for Sarah before heading home. Anyway, I arrive at the skate rink and hurry off to my little hideaway, but someone called out to me. Not just any someone. It was the husband whose voice I recognized. I closed the door behind me. The door to get in is right next to the exchange counter, and wave at my coworker before going into my workspace. While I'm setting my backpack and portfolio in my corner, coworker knocks on one of the cubicles that we set the skates in. He says that the husband wants to talk to me. So I go to see what he wants, figuring maybe that he just mistook me for someone else. After all, I did make a beeline for the exchange area. It's like 10 feet from the entrance. The husband asked if I designed the custom inline skates that were on display near the entrance, to which I nod, and then he made small talk about how they're cool. All the while, I'm just nodding, which raised a flag because normally after 10 minutes of talking, people usually notice when the other party hasn't said a word, while he talks about the skates. Then, he dropped the bomb by asking if I was one of the people his wife talked to. Now, the skate exchange section, counter and all, is raised off the floor just a bit, just how the place was built, so we can actually see people's phones. Given that he glanced up at me twice, I found it rather odd, so I tried to get a look at his screen and I froze. The guy has a picture of me walking on the sidewalk. It was somewhat out of focus and looked like it had been taken from inside a house, so the only conclusion I can come up with is that I walked by their house without realizing it. But I recognized Kevin, and I've yet to see anyone who dyes their hair the same color I do, if at all. I backed away and wrote on my notepad to the coworker, telling him to keep an eye on the husband, while I told my uncle and Sarah. My sister lost it and video called me within almost seconds after sending the text, asking if I'm okay, along with where I was. Meanwhile, our uncle called the police and said to stay in my work area, which I've already planned on doing from the start when I found out class was cancelled. Anyway, here comes some updates. Edit. So, the officer arrived and questioned the husband. Apparently the husband claims that he just wanted to speak with me. Also, his wife sent him the picture of me with attached text that said, "Let me know if you find her at the skating rink." But there isn't much that can be done since he can't confirm it's actually me in the pic. What? This doesn't make sense given that I don't imagine a lot of people dye their hair the same shade of hot pink like I do, and the picture isn't so out of focus that you can't compare it to me. I explained what the entitled parent did and that my uncle can show him the security footage to prove it. Only my uncle, the owner, can access the security tapes. Oddly enough, according to the officer, the husband claims that the entitled parent and the girl in the picture are actually friends. Given the contradicting stories, the officer wants to see for himself. A few minutes after that, Sarah and our uncle arrive. Uncle is with the officer now, and Sarah and I are just waiting. Edit 2. According to my uncle, the entitled parent was arrested. He said that when the officers arrived to question her, the entitled parent ran. The husband also denied knowing why the entitled parent would run and left with the officer who questioned me. Apparently, the officer wants to keep in contact with us just in case anything comes up and they need us to come in. For those of you wondering, I did ask my uncle if the officers told him what they found, and he says that they found illegal substances on her person, but otherwise that's all they found. I really don't know what to make of any of that, but it honestly really worries me that the entitled parent wanted her husband to find me at the skating rink. Needless to say, Sarah and I's uncle had already planned to take me to and from my classes for the next few weeks. I'm sorry for making any of you worry. I honestly just thought he was going to try and apologize on his wife's behalf to me. Wow, that is quite a lot to take in. I'm sorry that that happened. I have no words for this. That is disgraceful behavior. Our next story is titled, My Classmate is an Entitled Parent. Here's another story about an entitled parent, but she's my classmate. The police weren't called or anything, but she did get put in her class by a fellow classmate. For those who haven't read my other posts, I'm mute and have an extreme fear of being near people I don't know, which causes me anxiety. Cast, me, the majestic gummy bear. Sarah, classmate, who's also a good Samaritan, entitled parent, and entitled kid. Backstory. I go to a community college, which isn't so bad, but it really has its moments. This took place during my public speaking class. Before you ask, I know, the program I'm taking requires that I take that class. The professor already learned her lesson. I think I'll post that story later today if I have the time. So she lets me just listen and watch. Anyway, the entitled parent is a classmate who brings her kid to class because she has no one to watch him. But all she does in class is sit on her phone and gives the single mother who is doing her best all by herself excuses whenever anyone, professor included, speaks up about it. I haven't dealt with the entitled kid directly until this happened because Sarah or my desk mates would usher him away. The story. We were on our 30-minute break in between classes since it's a 4.5-hour class. During these breaks, I like to play on the piano that is located in the student rec room down the hall. It's mainly used for the music appreciation class, but I'm allowed to use it on account of my anxiety. Anyway, Sarah is sitting beside me while I'm playing, and the entitled kid comes stomping towards us. I don't think anything of it and try to keep my playing, but freeze when I feel him trying to force his way into the seat between me and my sister. In response, Sarah gets up immediately and starts trying to usher him away. I'm sorry kid, but you can't do that, okay? Keep in mind, she says this in a gentle but firm tone. The entitled kid, of course, starts throwing a tantrum, which then summons the entitled parent, who comes storming down the hall. This is the conversation that ensued between Sarah and the entitled parent. What did you do to my little boy? I'm sorry, but he tried to sit between me and my sister. She doesn't... So? He probably just wants to sit and play with her. Now look what you did. The entitled parent walks over and picked up her son. Before I could do anything, she set him beside me. He starts hitting various keys, which obviously starts creating a racket. Sarah helped me to my feet. Come on, let's just go. Where do you think you're going? Anywhere but here. My sister doesn't... I don't think so. My kid wants to play the piano with her. He seems to be just fine on his own. Besides, weren't you listening to the campus guidance counselor last week? Or did you even pay attention when she gave her speech then? It was more of a presentation.
Oh, don't give me that crap. It's obvious that she did that just to get attention. If any of it was actually true, then why doesn't she have a service dog, huh? Now the two of you are just gonna sit with my kid and...
Now, there were other people who were lounging in the rec area who were watching the ordeal. Why someone didn't jump in sooner is beyond me, but I'm glad that they did after the entitled parent said that. For the love of God and anime, would you just shut up and take care of your kid already? Stop trying to make others do your job for you. The entitled parent didn't say anything. Instead, looking at the Good Samaritan in surprise as he walked up to her, pointing a finger at her face. The only reason any of us put up with your kid in class is because you gave your sob story in front of everybody in the beginning of the semester. A few of us actually feel bad for you, you know? But... Don't even start, mate. I sit right behind you and all I've seen of you do in class is sit on your phone. We aren't your daycare, so either get your kid under control or drop out of the class. The entitled parent stared at him dumbfounded for a few minutes before picking up the entitled kid and hurrying off to the classroom. The Good Samaritan apologized to Sarah, and I then offered to explain what happened to our professor and take notes for me if I didn't feel like going back up to class. I readily accepted his offer and we went home. Since that day, the entitled parent has gotten the entitled kid a babysitter and has not said a word to me or Sarah since then. Okay guys, thank you for listening to that one. Drop me a comment below and we'll have a little chat about it. I really enjoy reading this person's stories and I hope they make more in the future because it's a nice twist to the entitled parents genre as a whole. It's kind of more humble. Anyway, I'll see you later and thank you for watching. Bye.